Clane stands on the road from Naas to Kilcock in North County Kildare, near to an ancient crossing point on the River Liffey. In order to guard this river ford, the Anglo-Normans built a motte and bailey castle. Then in the 13th century, a Franciscan Friary was established, known as Clane Abbey. This ruin is near to the probable site of an earlier Celtic monastery founded in the 6th century. Despite the fact that these historical relics are military and ecclesiastical, Clane seems to have functioned during medieval times mainly as an agricultural village and small rural service centre. During the first half of the 20th century, Clane's role remained the same. With decline in the rural craft industries such as blacksmithing and the diminishing farm labour force, Clane's population dwindled. It had fallen to 1/3 of the pre-famine population when in 1946 it reached a low of just 112 people. Then the continued existence of Clane as a village must have seemed in doubt.
The way children are dressed going to school now in comparison to our days. The food they're eating now in comparison with those days. They have such little work to do now compared to what we had to do.
People they weren't so well educated at that time. That no motor cars. Very few had even bicycles. They walked to the works, maybe walk 10 miles or 15 miles to the work and back. And I seen my father walking to Naas, and that's about 5 miles. And I seen my mother driving a donkey and cart all the way. At that time, you couldn't go in a donkey and cart now.
There was very little employment. Clongowes College was about the only place. They kept about 24 men, I think, on the farm, and then they had about 8 men in the garden, and they had about, I suppose, 50 men altogether.
Well, the people you knew at that time, were vast difference to the people you know now. They were more sociable to me. You meet the people now, but you don't know them. And you'd be looking at them all your lifetime and you wouldn't know them.
The population of Clane began to rise slowly in the 1950s and 60s. At the 1971 census, it was 600, and subsequent increase brought it to about 2,000 in 1983. This represents a growth of almost tenfold within a period of 20 years, a dramatic contrast with the previous downward trend. The growth of population has been largely the outcome of the addition of some 400 new houses to the original village. After an earlier small county council scheme, by far the largest housing estate was begun at Loch Bollard in the late 1960s. This was the first private development and comprised 150 houses. The estate was and still remains quite detached from the village proper. Next in size is a council estate of 50 houses. They are urban type estates, contrasting with the previous housing of the village. Other new housing has been in smaller groups and in dwellings of individual design. The growth in housing was reflected in the village core in changes in its shops and services, change in their number, size and nature. As in other rural villages, the traditional businesses had been general grocery shops and pubs. These remain, though expanded. In addition, there are many specialist shops, which indicate the change towards town status. There are 27 shops and also services such as banks, building society, insurance, hairdressing and dry cleaning. They employ about 100 people.
The services in Clane in the 50s were nearly non-existent. When I was growing up, there was literally only 3 pubs, maybe a few huckster shops, and that was it. And we existed, I suppose, in those days, and we didn't realise we were missing anything, I suppose. Then I'd say the turning point came with the advent of 2 dynamic principals to both the Boys' National School, Mr. Lynch, and Mother Perpetua to the convent here next door. From that moment on, more people seemed to come into Clane. And some years later, about 2 years later, Loch Bollard Estate was built, and I think that was the turning point. For once in our lives, we had extra people coming into Clane who were not natives of Clane. The advent of these extra people into Clane meant that Clane had to expand. We had to get new shops, we had to get new services, and in order to make it self-sufficient. And this we did. I opened my pharmacy, I expanded as I wanted it, and we had got doctors. We have 2 doctors here in Clane now. We have hardwares, we have every type of shop. I think it's practically self-sufficient. The only shop which might be missing might be a large furniture store.
While the shopping and service functions of Clane have expanded greatly, a large proportion of village residents also travel for shopping to the adjacent larger towns of Naas and Newbridge and to Dublin.